Hey, and welcome to Discipleship of Me, where we're centered in love and abounding grace. I'm your host, Kat. Hey, friend, and welcome back to the podcast. I hope you had a great week or two, because I did not record last week, so I didn't see you. But I hope you enjoyed your Mother's Day and all the things. I haven't done this in a while, but considering I missed last week, if you don't get notifications on YouTube, first, subscribe and hit the notification bell. And second, I also have a newsletter that I send out right before I publish any of the podcasts and right after I publish the podcast. That way you can stay in the loop and know when I post. So if you're interested, it's in the description below. And also follow me on the socials. But yeah, I did not post a podcast last week. And it wasn't because I wasn't thinking about y'all. I was just discovering that God is calling me into a new measure of faith and trust, and I'm running away from it, or at least I was running away from it last week, and we're going to talk about that. So, if you're interested in hearing about it, stay tuned. So, y'all, I think it's very funny how God revealed to me that I'm being called into a new measure of faith and trust. It started off with me like daydreaming and having actual dreams at night about marriage and being committed to somebody. So Monday I had like a dream about old crush, and I was like, oh my God, why? No, we're not doing that. That's the enemy. Um and then it went from, okay, that's the enemy talking, to no, I'm gonna let that go. I was like, I'm not holding anything else, any more feelings towards that relationship. I just, that's not me no more. That's not who I want to be. I'm not gonna react the same way I used to react to those thoughts. And I was like, I'm giving that back to you, Jesus, because I had nothing to do with that. I was asleep. Um, and that's kind of how that day went on Monday. I mean, that's how my night went Monday, or my night went Sunday. I don't know. But anyway, I had the dream, and then I was like, okay, that's weird. I'm gonna let that go. And then I don't know, throughout my day, I just started like daydreaming about like having a man, and I was like, what is going on? Cause I haven't been like feeling that way in a while. I really like am just content and was trying to figure out how to walk with Christ. And I was like, I'm good. I don't need all that. But then all of a sudden, I was like, I need a man. Oh my God, it would be so nice to have a man. I just need to call him right now. And then I was like, I don't know what's going on. And it wasn't just like, I just want to plan a wedding and get married type stuff, right? It was like just day to day, I wanted to have a partner there, right? And as the days go by, like that was Monday, and I was like, okay, whatever, just daydream about that, one off, right? Just having a day, just having a moment, no problem. But then Tuesday came, and then people started talking to me about relationships and when am I gonna find a man. I was like, how we get here? How we get here? And then the following day on Wednesday, Bible study was on like 1 Corinthians 7, and we was talking about marriage and the importance of marriage and finding a man, and this how you do that, all the things. Finding out that, well, not finding out, I already knew, but while we was studying, Paul is like, look, I prefer if you just stay like me and, never get married. Just serve the Lord. Use all your time for the Lord. And that's the kind of energy that I had been on. I was like, I'm not really trying to do nothing with nobody. I'm just trying to serve the Lord in the time that I got right now, all to myself. But this 3-day course of like people telling me about marriage, it keep coming up in my mind, and it was coming up in Bible study. I was like, what is going on? Is my man around the corner? Somebody let me know. um as I don't leave my house. Like I don't know how he finding me, but whatever. That's a whole nother problem for a whole nother day, right? And um so we were talking about, that, and I'm like, what is really going on here? So in the midst of all of that, I'm like, okay, so I'm having this strong desire to have a partner all of a sudden. Why is that? And I just sat there and I thought about it for a minute. I was like, well, what is the trigger? Why all of a sudden do I need or I feel like I need to have a partner? And as I was thinking about it, I was like, I think I'm feeling stressed and overwhelmed in that moment because I had all of these thoughts going through my mind about the podcast and about Christianity in general and about like different stuff that I was watching because I watch a lot of Christian YouTube videos and people talking about different theologies and different things about the Bible. I love talking about the Bible, right? And that's what I watch. But I don't have like, I don't want to say a designated person, but I don't have someone I can force to listen to me talk about Jesus, hash it out with me, right? Which is part of the reason why I have the podcast, is so I can let out some of my thoughts. But I don't let out all of my thoughts on the podcast, especially not ones that are super fresh. Because sometimes I have super fresh thoughts and they just real wrong. I don't want to share that with nobody, or I don't want to share it with the public. But I do want to share it with somebody. And I think that's what that strong desire for a partner was coming from. I just wanted somebody to, bounce ideas off back and forth and, confide in when I'm like feeling some type of way, regardless if it's about the podcast or just in general, right? And I think that was mostly what was going on with me. So when I realized that, I was like, okay, so I just need somebody to depend on and bounce ideas off of. But at the same time, I was like, shouldn't God be the one that I'm depending on for bouncing my ideas off of and making sure they're godly and, I should be casting all my cares unto Him, right? But as soon as I had that thought, I was like, well, do I not trust God to do these things? Do I not think He can do these things? Like, shouldn't He be keeping me in my season of singleness, as they say? And I was like, well, He is. He is keeping me in this time, but the Bible also tells us, Proverbs 11:14, where there is no counsel, no person fall. Wait, where there is no counsel, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors there is safety. But I also saw Proverbs 15:22, which I also like, and it just says, without counsel, plans go awry, but in the multitude of counsels, they are established. And I'm like, okay, so yes, the Lord can and He does and He is keeping me in this time of growing in the podcast and in this time of sharing my faith with everybody. And yes, it's still okay for me to desire the companionship of other people to counsel me, whether that be as a partner or it be as my friends or oversight or whatever it is. It's okay to want those things. Matter of fact, it is wise for me to have people advising me along the way because, you know, our minds can do some crazy things, and I also don't have all the answers. So getting people's opinions on the things that I do and the things that I say is actually a benefit to me to make sure that the plans that God has for me come to pass and that my pride and sometimes foolish ways don't get in the way of what God has for me, right? And I do have friends and family that I go to and I talk to, but I don't always want to burden them with the things that I be thinking about. Because sometimes I'm just saying stuff off the riff and it's just like my first initial thought of something. Sometimes my first initial thoughts are a little out there, or I say them in a little out there type of way, right? The Lord is controlling my mouth. He is my filter, but He working on me, right? So because of those thoughts and the way that they can come out, I don't want to just say them all willy-nilly just to anybody. And I don't want to plant any wrong ideologies in people's heads just because I'm thinking through something in the moment. So I tend to just keep most things to myself and take it to the Lord first before I talk to people about it, if I talk to people about it. And it's funny because if you watched the podcast last week, literally talking about how I did not want supervision when dealing with social media and sharing about Christ because I didn't want to do it somebody else's way. And the back and forth was killing my inspiration for sharing. So if you haven't watched that, go back and watch that testimony. But yeah, now I'm craving that oversight or that advisor in what I'm doing, right? Because I wasn't able to share any of these thoughts and all the things I was processing, I felt myself like slipping through the week. And it started with just like playing games on my phone, and then every time I wanted to, I noticed that every time that I wanted to at least do like just Bible study, I was having a hard time. Like I would sit down, I would be in his presence, I would read a section because I'm in the book of John. So, book of John, I think I was in chapter 5, and I was like, all I could handle was like a portion of it at a time. And then I was like, I gotta go. I gotta go. um, and that was like frustrating, but at the same time, I was like, I can't handle this right now. And I could see myself doing that over the course of the week. It really started, that part probably started like Wednesday. And then by Friday, I was done. I was trying to find everything I could do except like do the podcast or come spend time with the Lord. Like I was praying, but that was it. That's all I could muster was prayer. I could not sit down and read my word without it feeling heavy. I couldn't watch any of the normal programs that I watch because I think the Perrys even put out a new episode and I didn't get to watch it because I was like, I can't take this right now. Well, no, I watched some of that because they was talking about social media and sharing. It was doing what I'm doing, and I was like, oh, I couldn't take it. So I only watched half of it. So I need to go finish it. But anyway, I was just distracting myself, because I'm spiraling or slipping back into old habits like procrastination, which is what that is. I was also like overeating and entertaining thoughts that I shouldn't be entertaining. So by Saturday, I just wasn't doing anything pertaining to this, but it was still in my mind. I was like, I need to do the podcast. I need to get this stuff out. What is wrong? Why can't I get this out? And then I thought back to a conversation that I had, I think that was Thursday at the gym. And I was telling some people about the podcast because they asked what I would be doing when I left the gym. And I was like, oh, I think I need to go and record a podcast episode because it was on my mind. I just couldn't bring myself to actually sit in front of the camera and do it. And they started asking me, oh, well, what's the podcast about? And I told them. And then one of them asked me, what's the hardest thing about doing the podcast? And I told them that it was starting, that was the hardest thing. But I want to change my answer because, well, I think I did change my answer. I told him starting, but then I told the young lady I was talking to that it was sharing because now I'm in a comfortable spot to do the podcast. Like I have no problem sitting. I just said I had a problem, but before before last week, I did not have a problem with sitting down and doing the podcast, right? I was actually getting momentum and I had a routine down. I was like, okay, I started thinking about the podcast at least around like Thursday. That means by Friday, I can write something down to think about this some more. And then on Saturday or Sunday, depending on my schedule, I would then go and record the podcast so I can edit it by Tuesday and have it out, right? But that was the easy that because that part became easy. Now I'm having a hard time doing the sharing of the podcast because I'll post it to YouTube and I just be like, let the algorithm have it. Whoever the Lord wants to bring to the podcast is who's gonna come, right? And you know, yeah, that's true to an extent, but I still have a part to play in it, and I wasn't trying to play my part, which is like posting clips on social media, sending out the email or the newsletter. I did not send out the email and the newsletter for the one that I did live. Matter of fact, I did that one like just as a random Friday night at like 10, hoping that nobody would watch it or that nobody would log on while I was doing it live, which nobody did. But that was intentional because I didn't want to like have the interaction that I'm craving to talk about Jesus with people, to talk about this faith journey that we're all on, or even just people who are just curious, even people who just was like, I was a Christian and I'm not no more. I like talking to them too. But I was running away from that responsibility, and I noticed it, especially when I posted a TikTok about the Sinners episode that I did. It got a lot of views and it got a lot of likes, but it was somebody who commented. They were like, if you're using the Bible as your only source for Christianity, how do you know that the books in the Bible are supposed to be the books in the Bible? And you can't use the Bible to validate the Bible. I was like, when they asked the question in itself did not shock me. It didn't take me by surprise. I love listening to apologetic videos. So I was like, I heard these questions because I remember when my faith was shaking before, when somebody questioned my faith, and I was like, oh no, we can't do that. I need to be able to, answer these questions and not be so surprised. Even if I don't have an answer, I didn't want to be surprised about the questions that people had towards Christianity, which is probably why I watch a lot of apologetics videos. So when this person asked me that question, the question did not take me by surprise. But because I had never actually practiced answering the question, I had so much anxiety answering that question. And I saw the comment at around maybe 10 at night. And then I studied and I was like trying to figure out different ways to answer the question in my own words because I wanted it to be factual. And I also didn't want to treat their comment as if they were someone that was just being rude. I wanted to treat them as someone who was curious to actually know the answer. So I didn't want to come off as like standoffish or offended by their question. So I was like, I don't know how to answer this, Jesus. I went to sleep anxious. I woke up anxious about that still. That question was on my mind and how I was going to answer it. And I was like, well, I can't answer that question in this state because if I do, it's just going to be rushed or just not right if I answer it in this anxious way. I was like, I need to breathe in order to let God breathe the words that I need to say to this man or this person. And I prayed about it. And after I prayed, I felt better and I was able to breathe and not have anxiety when answering the question. And I answered the question, and the whole conversation, we had a whole back and forth, and it was very much everything I desire out of a nice, respectable conversation about Christianity. And I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, I got to talk about, well, we didn't talk about Jesus, but we talked about the Bible. And I was just so excited to do that, right? I was like, that's what I'm craving for. I want to talk to people. Talk to me. But the initial fear of, getting a question like that and not being able to answer it, feeling like I have to answer it, is something that I was struggling with. And I was like, okay, so this is why I'm not sharing, because I'm scared that the Lord is not going to give me an answer to give these people one. I don't want to go viral and then have all these questions under my comment section that I feel like I need to answer to. Granted, I know there's a limit to how much I can answer and how many people I can answer, and that is up to me of whether I respond to people or not. But still, be that as it may, I worry about that. And I also noticed that it was the same thing with the video that I did live on Friday. I didn't want that to go viral. I didn't even want people to know I was doing that one. I was like, nobody needs to see me try to do this live in front of no people. I was like, what is the point of doing a live if nobody is there? But whatever. Um, yeah, so after thinking about that and realizing that I had a fear of sharing, I was like, well, why am I scared of sharing other than, the responsibility of having to respond to people in a godly fashion, to the best of my ability, right? I was like, well, that's the fear of success. And because I'm fearing success, it was leading me to the self sabotaging slipping that I was doing, like playing on my phone all day and trying to avoid recording any way possible, right? And I was like, oh no, I'm self sabotaging. Oh no. And I don't know if the fear of having responsibility of sharing how the Lord is working in my life is a prideful thing or a wise thing. Like, am I being so prideful as to think that my words will deter people from Christ if the Lord has called them to Him? Yeah, so I just realized that I am doubting myself, one, and I'm doubting myself because I'm not a theologian. I haven't been to seminary school. I have not read the Bible cover to cover, word for word, back to back. Side note, I don't know how people just read the Bible straight through. I cannot do that. It's like I'm too curious about what's going on and trying to understand to just read it like it's a book. I don't know how y'all do that. The only version of the Bible that I can read, just read, I think it's the CBS version, the Christian CSB, yeah, Christian Standard Bible. Um, I can read that one straight through, but I don't like that. I like reading the King James version because one, it has words that make me think, and I'm like, why they use this word? What does this word mean? Which makes me dive deeper into the word because I'm trying to understand. NIV sometimes does the same thing. I like reading NIV because it's slightly easier, not slightly, it is easier to read than King James. So I read that first and then I go back and read King James and I'll be like, okay, so this would that mean, this would this mean. And if they remove whatever scripture, okay, I see it when I do the cross reading and I see why and all the things, right? That was my little side tangent about Bible study. But anyway, because of that, I realized that I am trying to like lean on my own understanding, right? And my own knowledge of the Bible in order to answer these questions from people. In order to uh yeah, just in order to answer questions from other people that might pop up instead of trusting that God will fill in the gaps of my knowledge. So I'm not trusting that He'll be there for me in those moments, even though in the Word it tells us, I think it's in Acts, and He tells you that the Holy Spirit will give you the words to say when you need to defend Him. So I need to believe in the Word for that. I think this is where my revelation came from that, oh, I need a new measure of faith in the Lord and a new measure of trust because I've never actually had to trust God when it comes to knowledge. I don't think. And the only reason I say that is because for most of my life, I've been smart enough to study hard enough and work hard enough to get to the places that I need to get to. I got through college by studying and working hard. I got the current job that I have by studying and working hard. Yes, I had to lean on the Lord in order to get the interview. So yeah, there was a measure of faith and trust that I had to have in God because I was new to my field, but ultimately I was still trusting in my knowledge of being able to get past the interview because it's a skill-based interview for my field. So I was like, yeah, as long as I've been working hard and I know what I'm doing for the most part. I just do what I need to do. My faith came in the fact that I had told my current job at that time that I was going to quit. I was like, my last month going to be January. And I was like, what did I just say? I didn't have no job lined up by then. That was Jesus talk right there because I don't know what was going on. But I can tell that testimony later. Yep. So God is bringing me into a space where I can't study fast enough to have the enough knowledge to answer any question that is thrown at me. Like I can't study this whole Bible and be ready for questions. It's not gonna happen because people question different things. People question things that I don't question. So having an answer for it off rip is like, ooh, Jesus, help me. And then it's also a space where my communication skills come into question. And I've always thought that I was a good communicator until I started doing this, and now I'm like, oh my god, I can't talk. Not only can I not talk, I cannot enunciate. See, I cannot pronounce my words and not the date. But yeah, because now the weight of things that I'm communicating to people is much more heavier, at least to me, because it's things of God. And, I'm also trying to like, it's like thin line I'm trying to balance. I'm like, I don't want to be a teacher. I just want to share what I'm learning. But that's being a teacher. And teachers are held to a higher standard in the eyes of the Lord. I'm like, oh Lord. Why? Oh God, it's just so ugh. It is just so ugh. To my mental. I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? And then there is like just no plans laid out at all on this path that I'm trying to take either. Like, yeah, I'm doing podcast episodes. I'm sharing my journey, and I can make plans for where I think this is gonna go. But unlike in my corporate job, I don't know what the actual next step is gonna be. And all of this is dependent on what I do. I'm the person that's supposed to have vision, be the visionary for this. I'm the person that's supposed to come up with the content, produce the content, show the content. Y'all, I need a team. And there's nothing wrong with needing a team. And it's not even that I need a team because I think I'm not talking about a production team. Because it's not like I think I'm going to like blow up and be who? Uh, Megan Ashley or the Perrys or Pastor Philip Anthony. I don't think I'm about to be all that. But I do need a team for what I said, a sounding board and getting ideas out there and making sure that my theology is not faulty um, for things that I am sharing, right? I mean, it's not like I'm never gonna share something that's not that people everything I say is not gonna be something that everybody agrees with. And we know that because Christianity is divided by a whole bunch of denominations, of course. People just can't agree. That's what people do. We don't agree. Yep. And another part of the problem is that I also am not trusting myself either in this situation. Like, how am I supposed to trust myself with making decisions? I want to be absolutely certain that they're the decisions that God will want for me to make, and that's the path that He set for me. But how would I ever know if I don't actually move, if I don't actually do the thing that he is telling me to do? So me running away from it because it feels like it's too much is not gonna be helpful, nor is it gonna stop the Lord from saying, "Cat, this is what you're supposed to do." So I say all of that to encourage not only you but myself that, I can't keep running. Like, I have to just surrender and give in to what it is that the Lord is trying to do in my life. And I encourage you to also just, if there is something that the Lord is calling you to do, if there is a new measure of faith that He wants you to take, if you need to trust Him more, if you need to let go of yourself more, I encourage you to do so because the word already tells us that He will complete the work that He started in us. So there's no running away from it. I mean, you have the choice to run away, but I promise you, life is so much harder when you're running from what it is you've been called to do. Um, and I know sometimes what we've been called to do can be uncomfortable and it takes us out of our comfort zone. But it is so freeing just once you actually surrender, it's just freeing. Um, because you're doing all that you were put on earth to do. So, well, I'm saying all this. That's all I got to say. And on that note, I would like to pray us out. You know the routine. If you can, close your eyes and bow your heads. All right. Dear Heavenly Father, I'd like to thank you for coming into this space and onto this broadcast. I pray that the words that I spoke touch someone. I pray that if the person listening to this does need to move in a greater measure of faith in you, that they surrender to that and that they allow you to lead them into that space, Lord. And I pray that they have community to help them stay in that space, to encourage them while they're in that space and headed towards that space. Um, Lord, I just pray that the person listening to this feels the presence, feels your presence in a greater quantity than they have ever felt. May you become more real to them with each passing day, so that this journey that they've chose to walk down becomes more than they ever expected it to become. And in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Y'all have a great day. Bye.